This is me waiting for my cat to finish eating so I can film. Hi, my name is Kristen and this is Kristen Craves Books. So I am here with my April wrap-up. I keep saying March. I've had to film this intro many times because I keep saying my March wrap-up, but it's April. I don't know where the time is going. I can't believe we're already into May. But yes, this is my April wrap-up, and April has been one of my best reading months in a long, long time. I managed to read 14 books, which is 47,000, can you imagine? 4,700 pages and something. So that's amazing. Normally I'm between 8 and 10 books and 3,000 and something pages. So to read so much in April was really, really incredible. But in fairness, I do live in Ontario and we have gone into our third lockdown. So it's pretty much all I can do is puzzles and read and watch Criminal Minds. But I'm almost done Criminal Minds and it's making me so sad. That is not what this video is about. And normally I go through all my stats on the Storygraph here, but because I have so many books, I just think the video will be too long. So I'll link to my profile. If you're curious about that, I am going to do a whole video about the Storygraph because I talk about it all the time and I would just think it deserves more attention. But anyways, I digress. Yes, but they do tell me my average rating, which I do want to tell you about. Let me just look that up. So my average rating was 4.04 stars, which is really, really good. Majority of the books I give 4 stars. That's just true. I didn't give any books under 3 stars this month, and I think I had 2 5-star reads. So I'll tell you about those right now. So I started my month off with a bang. Read one of my favorite books of the year. I think the more I sit on this, it might become a favorite book of all time. I just filmed a video of my favorite books of all time, and it's nearly made the cut, but I feel like it's too fresh in my mind. And that is Jade City by Fonda Lee. This deserves all the hype that it gets. I don't know if it gets as much hype on BookTube, but I definitely see people on Twitter talk about this all the time. And I love it. I can understand why it gets the Godfather references. It's definitely got that vibe in here about families and families being very protective of one another. Really what's so strong in here is the relationships. And it did take me maybe 7,500 pages to really get into this one, but it's a big book and you need all the setup of the world, the setup of the magic system. Incredible, incredible. And then all the characters involved. I don't think it's included in here, but I know on Fonda Lee's website she has a character map. I think there's a regular map. I looked at the different clans. I had all this information in front of me as I was reading this. So that was helpful. So I'm going to link that below too if you're interested in this. Because I think having those maps and that information is important to really get into this. But Fonda Lee has such great writing. She is not afraid to go there. This book caught me completely off guard. If you've read this, you know. And it's not often that I will want to start another book in a series right away or soon after, but that's definitely the case for this one. I wasn't even done this yet, and I was ordering the sequel, Jade War, which I have on my book card over there, and hope to get to in May, probably in June, though. And then the third book, Jade Legacy, comes out in October, so this is just incredible. So many people have talked about it, so I don't want to get into big of a synopsis, but yes, just believe the hype on this one and just kind of accept it. Just go into it knowing it's going to be a lot of characters, really atmospheric, but you're going to fall in love with it. So yes, 5 stars. This is one of my 2 5-star reads of the year, of the month, if that wasn't already obvious. And then there's one that I listened to in audio and read physically at the same time, and that is The Final Revival of Opal and Nev, and this is by Donnie Walton. And this is often compared to Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and it's a lot like that, but I think this is better because it has more to say. I loved Opal as a character. Opal is a black woman and Neve is a white man, and they were a duet. They were kind of just thrown together as a duet back in the day, and then were many years later, and they're having a bit of a reunion show, and they're being interviewed. People in their lives are being interviewed, much like Daisy Jones and the Six, but we're seeing how their dynamics play out over the year and what led to their breakup, what led to their demise, and it's brilliant. I thought that this was Daisy Jones and the Six, but better, and I know that might be a controversial opinion, but it's just true, and it's incredible on audio, so highly recommend this one. I'm so glad that I was sent this arc from, I believe, Simon & Schuster. Doesn't say, but yes. Oh yeah, here it is, Simon & Schuster. So yeah, I absolutely adored this. Discovered something about myself recently as I'm dipping my toes into graphic novels. Give me a sci-fi graphic novel and I'm happy. That is my sweet spot when it comes to graphic novels. And this one certainly fits the bill. This is Descender, and it is Descender by Jeff Lemire and Dustin Wynn. And actually, Jeff Lemire is quickly becoming one of my favorite graphic novel artists. And I'm just loving the artwork in here. It's kind of simple, but it's really striking and really works for the tone of the story. And this book follows Tim 21. He is a robot artificial intelligence, and he wakes up and realizes that his entire planet is wiped out, everybody is dead, and artificial intelligence robots, they are now illegal, and he's being hunted, and a lot happens in this small volume. So I really, really liked it. There are quite a few of these volumes, but I found them kind of expensive. So I'm just going to slowly collect them as I can and as I find them for decent prices. But I'm glad that I read this one, and I definitely do recommend it. So it's adorable. I then listened to an audiobook, Last Call, and that is by Elon Green. And just let me read you the subtitle here. It says, a true story of love, lust, and murder in queer New York. And I am loving this shift in true crime to where we are now focusing more on the victim than on the killer. I think that started with I'll Be Gone in the Dark by Michelle McNamara, and then The Five. I haven't read that one yet. It's about Jack the Ripper's victims, but it's high on my list. I've been meaning to read that for ages. And then Last Call is about a murder I've never heard of, Last Call killer from the 80s and 90s who was killing gay men in New York. And Elon Green really goes into the background of these men who were killed. He interviews family members, friends, people who knew them, and each chapter is dedicated to their life. And we find all the gruesome details of how they were found, but we don't get into the murderer until the very end. So I love that because it doesn't glorify the murderer, which is ironic as I am watching Criminal Minds right now, and I understand all the hype around true crime and how people get really invested in murderers and serial killers and things like that. But I like this shift, and I thought that Elon Green did a great job in Last Call, and I just thought it was really well researched. Canada, the RCMP gets involved in this, which was a surprise to me, so I just thought it was great. It's not a very long audiobook and definitely worth the listen, so I recommend that one. Then I was trying to get through a few of the books that were longlisted for the Women's Prize. I didn't do that great a job, but one that I did read was Lustered by Raven Lalani, and this is a hard book to talk about. I think it's a book you're either going to love or you're going to hate, and I just happen to love it, and I think a large part of that is Lalani's writing. She's a beautiful writer. I am shocked that this is her debut because it is just so well done, and she brings these characters to life. These are some of the most flawed characters I've ever read from, to the point that it could be frustrating, but that is the point, and that was what I thought was so special about this one. Now, this wasn't shortlisted for the Women's Prize, but I still think it's worth picking up. Look how shiny this cover is. But so we're following a young Black woman who is not happy in her career. She feels like she works in publishing, and she feels like she's being tokenized there. And we get into an interesting discussion about her relationship with the only other Black employee in her field at this company. So that I thought was very poignant and nuanced conversation in there. And she has a relationship with a man who's in an open marriage, and eventually she moves in with him and his wife, and they have a young adopted daughter who's also Black, and that gets complicated. It's just really interesting, and her relationship with the wife is what is most intriguing to me. And then we get into some she gets a job. She loses her job at the publishing company, and then she gets some odd jobs, and she gets a job as somebody who works for like a delivery service, like Uber Eats kind of thing. And that was very poignant because of the pandemic and how reliant we've become on delivery. I don't know, I just thought for such a short book, some great conversations in here. It's actually one that has grown on me more over time. So don't let the mixed reviews stop you from reading this. Read an excerpt and see if it's for you, because I thought it was really brilliantly done, and I can't wait to read more from this author. And I actually listened to a book for my monthly book club on Bookstagram. I love this book club. It's so great. And we listened to Fat Chance Charlie Vega by Crystal Maldonado. And I thought that this was one of the most relatable YA contemporary romances I've ever read. And that was very evident by the conversations that we had in this book club, because people were talking about how much they related to Charlie. And I don't think anybody in this group is under 20. It ranges from 20 to women in their 40s. So the fact that so many people from different ages, races, body types, we all related to Charlie in some way was brilliant. And the stories everybody shared was just incredible. So Charlie is a plus size teenager, and she is pretty confident in her body, but she has a mother who she has a complicated relationship with. Her mom used to be plus size, but then she lost weight, and she really is forcing that ideology onto Charlie, and it's something Charlie grapples with a lot. And I think a lot of people will relate to that complicated relationship that you can have with your mother, especially as a teenager. And so it's her trying to understand her mom in that way. But then I think the most interesting part for me was her relationship with her best friend. And she's always looked up to her best friend. She's felt envious of her best friend. And this leads to some conflict in their relationship. And especially when Charlie starts dating somebody, maybe ignores her friend a little bit. And I just think so many teenagers go through this. Their female friendships, we go through these things, especially when we're young, and I just related so much to all of it. And I just thought it was such an honest conversation about what it's like to be a teenage girl. Then I read an ebook of The Life and Death of Frankie D, and this is by Colleen Nelson, which is an interesting book. Like any books set at carnivals or circuses, things like that, I just like that atmosphere. Is very whimsical. And in this book, we're following Frankie D, who's been abandoned, and she's found in an alleyway, and she remembers nothing about her past. And then she's living in a foster home, and she's having these dreams where she's remembering a circus performer called Alligator Girl, I believe, and things are slowly revealed. That's really all I want to say. There's some triggers in here. I'm going to leave a link to the Storygraph page for all of these because they always have the content warnings, but I thought that this was a solid book, really interesting. I don't think I would have picked it up on my own if I wasn't part of a blog tour for it, but I did really enjoy it, and it reminds me I need to read more books about circuses, so maybe I'll do a video about that in the future. Then I read another graphic novel, and this one's an interesting one. It is The Iliad by Gareth Hines, and this is a heavy book. It's a bit thick for a graphic novel. I like the artwork in here. It's quite simple, but it works. Let me show you some more. And I'm so glad that I read this, not because I loved it or anything. I thought it was just average. It was just okay, but it's going to look great on my shelves with my other Greek myth books in my whole collection. But I'm so glad that I read this because I talk about Greek mythology all the time, but not everybody's read the Iliad. I haven't read the Iliad. I have the translation of it. I think it's by, who is it by? Caroline Alexandra. I've heard that's an incredible translation, but I haven't picked it up yet. But I read so many retellings, watched the movies. I know so much about the Greek myths that I feel like I can understand the mythologies and retellings pretty well. But so many people ask me, where do I start? Like, I want to read a retelling, but I don't have any background information about the actual story. Pick this up. You can get through this really quickly. I think it does a great job of telling you everything you need to know. As somebody who's familiar, it did get a little bit boring sometimes. The writing wasn't that great, but so accessible. There's also an Odyssey version that I want to get because I want to see if it does the same thing, because this will be my go-to recommendation when people ask me that from now on. So I do recommend this. Then sadly, I think this is my most disappointing read of the month, and it was not bad. I did enjoy it, but for all the hype that I got, it's a Reese Witherspoon book club pick. I just thought I was going to be blown away by it, and I just thought it was average. And that is The Henna Artist, and this is by Alka Joshi. And I actually was sent the sequel to this, and I'm excited about that because that book is 12 years later and actually follows my favorite character from this book, so that has potential to be something I loved. I love the setting in here. I don't know much about Jaipur, so that was fascinating. I don't know much about the history of henna, and actually the author has included in the back the history of henna. She's included a lot of great information back here. Let me see what else she has. The story of henna, some recipes, which I think is fun, the caste system in India. So I think actually the most interesting part for me was the end matter that she included in here. But I just wanted it to give me something more. I just thought it was very surface level. but I am glad I read it. And this book takes place in Jaipur in the 1950s, which is also interesting because that's right after India got independence from Britain. So that is a time period I'm intrigued about. So if you know any books set around that time in India, I'd be interested in that. I still think that this is a good read. I just wanted something more. I can't really put my finger on it, but I am looking forward to reading the sequel, and I'll let you know what I think of that one when I get to it. I then listened to Pride and Premeditation by Teresa Price, and oh, I love this book so much. I think after reading The Henna Artist and some heavier books, I just needed something light and fun, and this was perfect. It is a Pride and Prejudice retelling, but it's like a cozy mystery, but it takes the characters you know and love and puts them in a whole new world, which is so refreshing to me. It was nice to see Elizabeth Bennet as like a little amateur detective, and her dad is a lawyer in this, and they have a lot of the classic lines from the book, but with a little twist on them. And Darcy is a lawyer, and Bingley is accused of murder, and they're trying to prove his innocence, and obviously they butt heads. There's lots of banter, and I suspected a lot of people, so I was kind of right in the end, but how it all came together was a surprise to me. So my only complaint about it is I wish we got more of her sisters, because I think part of the reason I love Pride and Prejudice so much is her interactions with her sister, especially Jane. Obviously Jane's in it, but not enough for my personal taste. But oh, I love it. I highly recommend it. And I know that this is a series. There are going to be 3 books announced so far. The second one's a Sense and Sensibility retelling. I'm going to put the picture up or I'll write the words here of what it's called. I forget now. And the third one is Mansfield Park, and I know that one's called Manslaughter Park because I thought that was hilarious. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to the other books in the series, and I highly recommend this one if you like cozy mysteries and Pride and Prejudice. I then read my other 5-star read, one of my favorite authors. This has solidified him as one of my favorite authors, and this will probably end up on my best books of the year list, and this is Clara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. If you watch my favorite books of all time video, my number 1 book, spoiler alert, was Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro, and Clara and the Sun had a lot of the same vibes as that book. It's got the same tone. We tackle a lot of similar ethical and moral questions. There's something bittersweet about both of them, and after I finished this, it just left me this heavy feeling, but I just thought this was incredible, so brilliant. And we're following Clara, who is an artificial friend, they are called in here, and she is at the store waiting to be bought by somebody. She sees children come and go, and eventually somebody does take her home, and we learn the in and outs of this child and this household and the mom and the neighbor's son, and just a lot happens here, and that's all I'll say. It's kind of a simple story when you get down to it, but a lot happens, and it'll weigh on you. This is one you'll put down. You won't want to pick up something right away because you'll have to think about it. So hopefully I can reread this sometime soon, because I think I'll get even more from it upon a reread. But yes, one of my favorite books ever now. I then I needed something light after that. I needed a palate cleanser, so I listened to Second First Impressions by Sally Thorne, and this was okay. I read The Hating Game and really liked it at the time, but that's when I just started getting into contemporary romance, and the more distance I have from it, the less I remember, the less I'm then invested in it. And then Sally Thorne's second book came out, and that got mixed reviews, so I never got to it, but I love the premise of this one, and this one is set in a retirement village, and I love the setting so much. There are some great side characters in here. We're following a woman who is just happy to be working. She's an administrative assistant. She's happy to be working at this retirement village, and she could spend her whole life here and be thrilled. And all her company is the elderly. She doesn't interact with many people at her age. So when the boss's son gets a job at this village, it kind of shakes her whole world, and they have such great chemistry and banter, and it's just really, really sweet. There's something so authentic about this romance. I feel like this could be your story, this could be your friend's story. It just felt really real in that way, but it's forgettable. It's a great friends to lovers romance, but I don't think this is one that I will think about that much, that I will recommend very often. It just was perfect for the moment that I read it. If you just want something light and fun that you can get through quickly, it's perfect for that. And then one of my most anticipated romances came out recently, and that's Life's Too Short by Abby Jimenez, and 5 stars. So maybe I had 3 5 stars this month. I think I probably gave this one 4.5. It's hard for me to give 5 stars to a romance, but this one was very, very close. The second book in the series, the Happy Ever After playlist, is one of my favorites of all time, but this has topped it. I loved Vanessa and Adrian. They have so much chemistry, so much respect for one another. It's so sweet. This is a friends to lovers kind of romance as well, but it's just done in a different way. It is so deep, so layered. This is not, well, Second Chance Impression is light. There's some heavier themes, but not really. It's just fun. This one here, Life's Too Short, has some heavier themes. This won't be your lighthearted romance. Our main character, Vanessa, has lost her sister to ALS, her mom to ALS, and she's a 50-50 chance of having the gene herself, and she has some numbness in her hand, and she thinks that that's a symptom of the disease. So she's decided life's too short. She's decided that she is not going to think about it. She's not seeking treatment. She is a travel vlogger. And then her half-sister leaves her baby at Vanessa's door. So now she is grounded. She cannot travel. She's now raising a baby, and she lives in a building, and the baby's crying, and her neighbor, Adrian, knocks on the door, and he offers to watch the baby while Vanessa showers, and it all kind of unfolds from there. And there's themes of drug addiction in here, family conflict, so it's not a light book, but it's so well done, and one I will think about for a long time and recommend a lot. And then I finished the month with a book I've been meaning to read for a long time, and I like the idea of food memoirs. I read Eat a Peach by David Chang. Is that his name? Where is that book? Yes, David Chang. I should know that. I've been to his restaurant, but yeah, and I like that one. I read that in January, and there's so many on my list, so I want to get through them because I do really, really enjoy them. But this one is incredible. It is Save Me the Plums by Ruth Reichel, and she was a food critic for the New York Times for a long time, and then she was the editor-in-chief at Gourmet Magazine, and I like anything to do with a world that I don't understand and will never experience. If you can pull back the curtains, give me some behind-the-scene gossip into the life of a magazine editor, an actor, something like that, I am here for it. So to know about all this behind-the-scenes stuff, what goes into making a magazine, we meet photographers, managing editors, everybody, and loved it. Ruth Reichel, you could tell that she was a food critic because her writing is incredible. She also put, I bookmarked one in here. She also sprinkled recipes throughout here. This one here is for a jeweled chocolate cake that sounds delicious. Maybe I'll cook that in a vlog one day, but loved this. And I know she has other memoirs and she writes fiction, so I can get into that. And she was the editor-in-chief at Gourmet during 9/11, and their offices were in Times Square, so she talks about what that was like. And her and everybody at the company, because they have kitchens at their offices, made food for the firemen and first responders. So lots of great stuff in here. And I think it's interesting that she talks about how her job affected her relationship with her son and the changes she had to make to do it all. It's just really, really a good time. So I'm glad that I read that. Whew. So that is it. Those are the 14 books that I read in April. I was about to say March again. And I'm actually started at April the 29th right now, and I'm actually in the middle of a couple of books, but I don't think I'll finish them before the end of the month, so I'll talk about those later. But I hope that you had a great April. So let me know what the best book you read in April was, and I will talk to you again soon. Thanks for your time. Bye for now.